Ghislaine Maxwell is expected to make her first court appearance in New York on Friday. She faces 6 charges relating to crimes allegedly committed by her former boyfriend, the sex offender Jeffrey Epstein, who killed himself in prison last year while awaiting trial. All eyes are, of course, on what, if anything, she'll say about Jeffrey Epstein's friendship with Prince Andrew. We'll speak to the woman who first made public that friendship between the two in a moment. First, though, I'm joined by our US correspondent, David Grossman. What is happening now, David? What are you expecting?
Well, Ghislaine Maxwell is continuing her journey through the American criminal justice system. Today, she's been moved from the rather cosy-sounding Merrimack County Jail in New Hampshire, about 20 miles away from the house in New Hampshire that she bought last year, where she was arrested by the FBI last Thursday. And she was taken to the rather less cosy-sounding Metropolitan Detention Center in Brooklyn, New York. Now, she's going to make her first appearance, as you say, in federal court on Thursday on those 6 counts, 4 criminal counts relating to the procuring and transporting of minors for illegal sex acts, and 2 counts of perjury. And it's at that hearing that we expect prosecutors to oppose her application for bail. They say she poses an extreme flight risk. She is in possession, they say, of 3 passports. She has a lot of money and a connection all over the world with lots of powerful individuals. And they say, quote in a memo, absolutely no reason to stay in the United States and face the possibility of a lengthy prison sentence.
Where does that leave all the other names then?
Well, I imagine a lot of people will be pretty nervous about what is she going to say. She's been photographed over the years with many rich and powerful individuals, not least, of course, Prince Andrew. Now, one of the women, one of the girls that Jeffrey Epstein preyed upon, one of his victims, Virginia Giuffre, Roberts as she was, has claimed that Ghislaine Maxwell pressured her into having sex with Prince Andrew in 2001 when she was just 17. Now, Prince Andrew denies this happened. As you know, you asked him the question, Emily. Today, the Labour leader, Sir Keir Starmer, a former director of public prosecutions, was asked about this. Here's what he had to say.
So does Prince Andrew need to cooperate with the US to put this to bed?
Well, of course he should cooperate with the US.
Are you disappointed he hasn't, Sir Keir?
Well, he will have to justify his own actions, but it doesn't matter who you are. You cooperate with the law enforcement authorities when they require you to do so.
Now, last Thursday, those federal prosecutors reiterated their request for Prince Andrew to face questions by them. Now, lawyers for the Prince have pointed out that they say he's done nothing wrong, and he has offered to cooperate on many occasions, including 3 occasions this year when he's contacted the US Department of Justice and offered to answer their questions.
David, thanks very much indeed. Well, I spoke earlier to the former chief prosecutor for the northwest of England, Nazir Afzal, and Conchita Sarnoff, the first person to make public the friendship between Prince Andrew and Epstein in 2010. I started by asking Conchita if she thought the alleged victims of Epstein were close to getting justice today.
Emily, I believe their accusers are far closer today than they were in 2009 when I began the investigation. And I think that given the Attorney General's latest interview, where he said that he was very interested in, quote, interviewing, end quote, Prince Andrew, and moving forward with the other investigations, I believe the Department of Justice is very serious this time around. Just
to remind our viewers, you were friends with Ghislaine. You told her a decade ago of the discoveries that you had made. Is that right? What was her response at the time?
Yes. Well, the word that she used, which surprised me, was ridiculous. I've known Ghislaine for many years, since the early 90s. And when I reviewed the first arrest report, the Epstein's arrest report at the Palm Beach police station, and I reviewed the indictments against Ghislaine, I called her and I said, Ghislaine, I'm not sure if you're familiar with all these charges, but I'm very concerned. And are you familiar? Do you know? And she said, oh, that's just ridiculous, Conchita, and shrugged it off. And basically didn't have many nice things to say about the girls who had been accusing her and Jeffrey Epstein. And that was the end of the conversation.
In the US, you have the system of plea bargaining. In essence, the possibility of reducing a sentence by providing information that authorities find helpful. What impact do you think that system could have here?
First of all, Ghislaine Maxwell is covered under the immunity clause when Jeffrey Epstein was given the agreement, the non-prosecution agreement back in 2008. So Ghislaine was covered under that agreement. That would make it a federal agreement. That was not a state agreement.
If she's covered under a federal agreement of immunity, then does that mean she's untouchable? I don't understand that.
Yes, well, that is exactly right. And in that non-prosecution agreement, which seems to be an ironclad deal because, number one, it was never overturned in 2018. That non-prosecution agreement negotiated in Washington, D.C. by the Department of Justice and Mr. Epstein, the late Jeffrey Epstein's attorneys, that is a binding legal document which provides immunity, meaning a safe harbor for those procurers identified in the arrest reports and identified in Jeffrey Epstein's indictment. So of those, Ghislaine Maxwell is one. In addition, there is also very important the statute of limitation, which as you know, it's now been 20 years.
Conchita Sarnoff, thank you very much. Nazir Afzal, Prince Andrew has stated clearly that he's cooperated with the US authorities. He says on at least 3 occasions. How do you explain the mismatch then with what the authorities there are saying?
Good evening, Emily. Well, the Americans don't normally exaggerate when they say, as they've said in this case, that they don't think what Prince Andrew has offered amounts to cooperation. As I understand it, Prince Andrew and his representatives are keen and will provide a written statement, which is him saying what he wants to say. What the American authorities want to do is to be able to probe him on that, and that requires a face-to-face interview. And they are miles apart. A written statement is really what you want to say, and it goes without challenge. And what an interview can do is to challenge you. And I think that's where the difference lies. So whilst, yes, there's an offer of cooperation, it certainly doesn't meet the standard required by the American authorities.
Is this a different set of circumstances? Will they be conscious of wider diplomatic implications in all of this?
I've no doubt. I mean, you can't operate in a vacuum. You will know he doesn't have sovereign immunity. Only the Queen has that. He doesn't have diplomatic immunity because only when he was a trade envoy would he have that. So he's just an individual like any other individual. Of course, he happens to be the Queen's son, and therefore, as a consequence, there will be massive ramifications, not just in this country, but across the world. All of that must play a part. But what the prosecutors are doing is trying to deliver justice for the alleged victims, or the accusers, as I think you call them. And that must be their primary responsibility. I have prosecuted thousands of sex offence cases during my career, and they are the most difficult cases to prosecute. Invariably, you only have one person's account against another person's account, and that often leads to unsuccessful outcomes. But I always prayed that I would find another witness or somebody who had information or somebody who had intelligence or evidence, and that would undoubtedly strengthen the prosecution case. And what they clearly feel, the FBI, is that whatever information or evidence that Prince Andrew has would strengthen their case against any individuals that they plan to prosecute in the United States.
So in this case, if you were an FBI prosecutor, you would not be satisfied with written statements. Is that what you're saying?
On the face of it, no. You want to be able to probe, strengthen your case, and that means you want to be able to put any information that you have that might contradict the statement that's been given by your witness, and you can't do that in a written written statement. You
Even
can
though
do
he's
that
just
in
he's just a
interview.
witness, though, isn't he?
This is going to be a contested matter. It's going to involve substantial amounts of cross-examination and lots of evidence being given and challenged. You want to be able to challenge your witnesses' evidence before they have to do it in a courtroom. And that's why it's important, I think, that the FBI do what they want to do, which is to be able to, in effect, examine the prince on what his account would be.
Where does this go from here? As you look at the situation, Prince Andrew thinks that he has done all that he is able to do. The FBI think that there are huge gaps. Keir Starmer, the Labour leader and obviously former Director of Public Prosecutions, is urging the Duke of York to go further and to be that witness. What would be your bet as to how this proceeds?
I think the Home Office want to stay out of it. As I understand it, there's been a formal request from the Americans, and the Home Office want to stay out of it. What they would want, I think, is what Keir has said today, namely that the Prince finds some way of being able to accommodate the American request and do so. That might be, for example, being interviewed here in the UK by American investigators in some neutral territory. That way, they would be able to cross-examine him or examine him on what he says to ensure that they are able to satisfy themselves that they've got all they need. And so I think that might be the ultimate solution to this, or certainly one solution.
Well, Prince Andrew has previously released a statement saying the US Department of Justice, he stated he's never has been the target of an investigation, and the Prince has offered to cooperate 3 times as a witness. The Prince and Ghislaine Maxwell have denied ever being aware of Epstein's wrongdoing and themselves deny any wrongdoing or involvement in any crime.